All right. Hey, folks. So today we're going to be talking about how if your program isn't working, it might not necessarily be the fault of the program. It might be something else in your life. So firstly, thanks for making it onto my channel. If you have any questions or comments, pop them down below. And if you'd like to work with me on your own strength and physique goals, there's a link in the description. Now, most people seem to go about thinking that their program is the sort of major source of physical stress in their life. So if the program isn't working, then they have to manipulate things in that program. So if something's not working over the course of a few weeks, they'll go and make some changes and some tweaks. And I've talked quite a lot about programming over the last few months on this channel. But I want to address the other side of the coin, which is lifestyle factors and how they can influence a person's success. I mean, I work with a lot of clients, so I can see the variance in how people get on with programs relative to their personalities. And over time, you work with enough people and you start to see some trends. And I want to talk about that a little bit today. So now, firstly, let's talk about sleep. I think sleep is probably a pretty big one. We know now that insufficient sleep causes more muscle to be lost and less fat to be lost when you're in a calorie deficit. We also know that when you're in a sort of lean gain type of phase and you have insufficient sleep, you're more likely to put on fat and put on less muscle. So overall, lack of sleep is a bad thing. So if you're consistently having late nights, if you're not managing things properly, if you don't have particularly great sleep hygiene, for example, and for those of you who don't know, sleep hygiene is referred to as sort of your almost like your routine before you go to bed. So it's not hygiene in the sense of staying clean, although that is part of it. So taking a shower is a good idea, but just general your routine. So having your phone switched off about an hour before bed, trying to reduce light, trying to gently start to wind down, do activities which are going to be conducive to having a good night's sleep, those kind of things. Not eating too close to bed, stuff like that. All that kind of stuff helps with better sleep, which then helps you better outcomes, which really separates one person from another who might not be getting as good results. Another thing is stress. Stress for sure slows down recovery. I know that for people who are of a mindset where they're less likely to get stressed, they can handle a lot more work. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If we're just looking at things in terms of perceived stress, if you have an ability to let things just roll off your back, more than likely you're going to be able to handle more stress in the gym because you're not particularly stressed. I mean, you think of, just as a great example, you think of some of the best bodybuilders of all time, your Jay Cutlers, your Ronnie Colemans. Those guys were just famous for not letting anything else bother them, not letting anything inside. You look at some of the more stressy bodybuilders, there's a difference anyway. I've also seen that there's an increased risk of injury. People who generally tend to be quite stressy, they tend to have an increased risk of injury. Usually not when you're young, because when you're young, just your sheer youth can mask over a lot of those things. Although those younger people who get stressed easily may all get colds and flus and things more often. But definitely increase the risk of injury due to perceived stress. That's not even physical stress. It's literally mental, emotional stress, and that can increase your risk of injury. I think there's also something to be said for how you as an individual perceive stress. So, none of us are immune to stress in life, but it's how you perceive it. On that note, there was a book I read a couple of years ago called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, which I would highly recommend. Because something around my life when I hit about sort of 35, I just got really stressy. I don't know why. I think a lot of people do get into that. I don't know, maybe some of you older guys can relate. Once you hit certain landmark ages, you think, you should have accomplished X, Y, and Z, and you start to get a bit stressy. But I stopped smelling the roses, as it were, when I was about 35, and it caused a lot of life stress. But it was all self-imposed. It wasn't anyone around me giving me stress. It wasn't my work situation giving me stress. It was literally all self-imposed. My own expectations of myself were super high, and so that caused me a lot of stress. Sure, some of you guys can relate. So how you perceive stress, really, really affects you. And I notice that now with some people I work with. Some people are just a ball of stress, and what I mean by that is every little thing is like an event. So they get a bit of a cold and all of a sudden they think they've got the big C word and it's not that, and it's something else, and it's just everything is a thing. Everything is like a major event. Do you ever know those people who it's like their life is just full of drama? Like everything is like this big overblown event. And fortunately, I don't have many friends like that, but I do. Due to the nature of my work, I'm exposed to a wide range of people, so I am exposed to people like that. I mean, it's fun, it's interesting, but it's not normally my friendship group. Everyone's quite relaxed. Obviously, I'm a bit older, so for those kind of people, I think they live on that high form of sort of stress. They're almost addicted to it. I think in a way they almost like to feel that way, or they think that life should be lived that way. So, or perhaps that's how they get attention. I don't know, but I think with those type of people who are just balls of stress, the type of people where everything is like a thing, if you add a strenuous routine on top of that, like a really high volume routine, then that's going to be a disaster. So those types of people, they tend to respond better to lower levels of volume and just slower, gentler progress, or they burn out real quick. And then it's the thing again. Often I've noticed over the years, and this is something which I've never really been able to explain, but I'll talk about it with you guys and just give you my thoughts on why it might be. But often my best clients are usually the busiest. You'd think that my best clients would be the young guys who have got just, college, school, whatever, and that's it. No other jobs or no other responsibilities. But often my best clients are the busiest guys, the guys who wake up at 5 a.m., go to the gym, go for a walk, have a job, have a family, all that kind of stuff, and manage to juggle everything. I've always wondered why. I think it's probably because they tend to be, just by nature of the types of people they are and how they've gotten into the positions they've gotten into, like high paying jobs, good family life, good work-life balance. They're probably of the personality type where they are very productive and they don't have this emotional attachment to any one thing in their life. So like the previous guys I was talking about, they're not like that ball of stress. So they just get things done. I heard a James Clear quote once where he's talked about the difference between a professional and an amateur is that a professional will just get the job done. An amateur will agonize over every detail of it and waste time agonizing over it. And that's sort of what I'm saying here. Often those clients tend to be the busiest and they have a very cerebral attitude towards things that need to be done. So if they're on a diet, they'll just go and eat the diet food. They won't sit there and agonize about the next meal like, oh, I don't want to eat that. Oh, maybe I could eat something else. Let me open up my phone. Let's see what Tetris I can play with my calories on MyFitnessPal and try and get it to fit in. Because all of that is stress. It's just adding stress. It's just taking time away from doing other things where you should be productive. And ultimately, it's non-productive, but it's something which I think is very common with a lot of people. And finally, I think just general fulfillment in life, like jobs, relationships. When I have clients who are on the tail end of really hard, long cuts, especially younger guys, I always, if they usually, as normally what has happened is they'll usually start to discuss relationships and stuff like that, and life stress in that way, sort of problems with significant others. I think as people get really dieted and they're new to it, they end up getting a little bit more stressy and having issues with their significant others. And I always try and encourage those clients to have good, healthy relationships with their significant others, whoever they're with, because ultimately keeping the significant other happy is going to be a large beneficial factor in keeping the client stable, keeping the client happy. I mean, the classic example of that is Alex Ferguson, Manchester United manager. He was famous for making sure that all of his young guys were in stable long-term relationships as best that he could, because he knew that would keep them focused on their game. And it's the same with some of my younger clients. I encourage them to, we do things as much as we can so we're not interfering with the relationship with their significant other, because ultimately that's going to only add stress, which is going to make the diet or bulk or competition, whatever they're doing, even more stressful. So I think life fulfillment is a big thing. Being with a significant other that you love, you care for, and who loves and cares you, and that you have a healthy relationship, and also being in a job which you enjoy, which you find fulfilling, which allows you to express yourself. So that's also important. And it all goes part and parcel of being able to do something like training, dieting, whatever it is, contest prep, whatever your thing is, and to do that most effectively while having the least stressful life. I think I honestly, just as a kind of a summary, I honestly think some people just maybe think that life should be lived in a very stressy way, and they're happy to accept a high level of stress, higher than what is healthy, on a day-to-day basis. I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts. I would urge those people to consider that actually, ultimately, your own mental health is far more important. And if you're in good mental health, odds are I'll be a happy coach, because you'll probably get good results from a routine as well. So yeah, I guess the main sort of summary I can say here is, if your routine isn't working and it's consistently not working, sure, maybe you need something a bit more advanced, like we've talked about recently with the conjugate stuff or whatever. But you also may want to look at outside factors. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you at a reasonable level of stress? Are you not stressing about things which you shouldn't need to stress about? Think about things. Is it a life-changing thing? If not, try not to get upset about it. Are you doing what you can to have a healthy, fulfilling relationship with your significant other? Are you doing what you can to have a healthy balance with work? So these are all important things in your fitness success. So hopefully you guys sort of found that useful, because I think it's the other side of the coin to just, getting a better program, just trying to figure out whether to do 10 or 20 sets per week, trying to figure out what the best exercises for quads, whether it's leg extensions or squats or whatever. The other side is that. And that's one of the reasons why I think when you're coaching people, you end up becoming a bit of a life coach as well. I don't advertise myself as a life coach, but like, you end up becoming friends with people, and you end up trying to improve their life and make things smoother in other ways as best you can with your own life experience. And so, because it's all holistic, and holistically you're looking to help people because it helps them with their fitness and health goals as well. All right, folks, I'm going to call it there, and I'll speak to you guys soon.